Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 17 of the Rock and Roll Beer Guy podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Audible. If you use our link, audibletrial.com/RRBG, you get a free 30-day trial and a free audiobook from their 180,000-plus book selection. This podcast is also brought to you by Blue Apron. If you go to rockandrollbeerguy.wordpress.com, you can find a link there that says Blue Apron. Click there and you'll get $30 off your first order and free shipping. It's a great way for you to support the podcast if you enjoy what I'm doing here. In this episode, I talked to the artist Chet Zar. He's a visionary artist that has done work for the band Tool and for movies like Hellboy 1 and 2. We talk about a bunch of different stuff, including out-of-body experiences, the occult and paranormal, his career in the art world, and his new podcast, Dark Art Society. It's a really great conversation. I hope you enjoy it. Cheers.
Have you heard the news? The dead walk. You hear that sound? You hear that sound? Like fingers scratching underground. You hear that sound? That slamming door. I fought it all my life, but I can't fight it anymore. It's catching up. I fought a dead duck.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the Rock and Roll Beer Guy podcast. I'm here with Chet Zar.
Hello.
For those of you who are not familiar, he is an artist. Do you have a subtitle? Artist, sculptor?
I just say artist, usually.
Yeah.
It covers a lot of things.
Yeah. You have your own podcast called Dark Art Society.
Yeah, Dark Art Society podcast. We just started not too long ago.
Very cool. Yeah, I checked out a few episodes, man. I really dig it.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. It's you and gentleman who directed the movie on you as well?
Yeah. Mike Carell, the director of Chet Zar, I Like to Paint Monsters, which is a documentary about me and my artwork.
Very cool.
Yeah, we just have this rapport. We became really good friends during the process of making the documentary over 3 years. And so we would just always talk on the phone and chit-chat. And we used to think we should make a podcast out of this because it's pretty interesting. It's not just, run-of-the-mill stupid stuff, usually. So we just kind of went with it, and people are digging it so far.
Yeah, man, it's great. Let's start all the way back in the beginning. Chet Zar. Is that your real name? Is that an artist name?
No, that's my real name. That is I was born Cepeda. That's my biological dad's last name, Chet Cepeda.
Okay.
And my parents got divorced when I was 5 or so, and my mother married her childhood sweetheart, who was an artist named James Zar, which is his real name, and then he legally adopted me when I was like 12 or something, so then I took the name.
Oh, very cool.
And yeah, when you have a weird name like that, you don't need to have an artist name, really.
Yeah, well, yeah, I figured as much. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, so Cepeda, is that Hispanic?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, my dad was like half Hispanic, half, French German, I think. My grandfather totally spoke with a pretty heavy accent.
A French one or a Spanish one?
He was from some part of Mexico. I don't know that much about the family, but
okay.
Yeah, like a Hispanic accent, and no, his mother was French German, I believe.
Very cool. All right. Well, before we get into art, which is going to be probably the bulk of this, but are you a beer fan? Are you a craft beer fan?
I wouldn't say I was a fan. I like it. I just haven't. I never got really into drinking.
Okay.
I was never a big drinker, but I do like it. And my son loves it. He loves craft beer, so he's always bringing them home for me and stuff. And I have a couple friends who brew and stuff, so I definitely drink it. I just have not. I haven't gotten to the point of fan. I guess I would say, but I do like it.
What would be some of the ones you have in your fridge, or some that you've enjoyed that maybe you remember?
Let me think. There's some good, I don't remember the names, but there's some good stuff. There's a guy I'm in Monrovia, which is like near Pasadena, California. There's a guy who brews his own stuff out here that's really good, and I forgot his name. The names of the beers.
It's Congregation, maybe? Because there is a small place in Monrovia called Congregation.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I don't remember. Like I said, I'm not enough of a fan to know the names, put it that way.
Cool.
I like it. It's just like, as an artist, I work like 7 days a week because I quit the effects industry, which was my steady paycheck. So that's why I don't have tattoos or anything. It's like I don't have time for anything other than keeping my business going and doing my artwork. So it's like I don't really have time to get into any fun things that I want to do.
Any hobbies?
Yeah. Seriously.
Yeah. Well, okay, so how is that working out for you, leaving a day job to focus strictly on the art? Like, I guess what I'm trying to get at is how much art do you have to create in order to sustain a living?
Well, I've found over the years, it's been I made the decision around 2000, so I guess it's been
17 years.
17 years, but I really didn't start getting serious about it until probably 2004, 2005. So I've found that it's not so much about creating more art as much as it is about embracing marketing and being smart about how you earn your money as an artist. Like I could just make painting after painting and painting after painting and try and sell those, or I could make a painting and then I could put it on a t-shirt and I could make prints and make more money from selling an original that way through merchandise. So, when I say I'm working, it's not always like I'm just painting. It's like half the day I'm dealing with orders and shipping and all this other bullshit that nobody wants to deal with. And then the other half is kind of creating the artwork, the other half of the day.
So you don't have like a agent or a person that's helping you with that stuff. You do it all yourself.
Yeah, pretty much. I just have my wife helps with shipping and just whatever needs to be done sometimes. And then I have someone who comes like on a part-time basis that helps me with shipping. And then my son does runs for me if I need runs, so I never have to leave the house.
Very cool.
So I've got a small crew, but it's mostly me. Very
cool, very cool. And you started when you were very young. I read online you started doing art as a child.
Yeah. As long. I mean, I remember being 3 and drawing a turtle. That's the oldest memory I have of drawing it. But I probably was doing it even before then. But that was always my thing. I just took to it right away. And my parents were really cool about supporting it and encouraging me. So they never, told me not to do it. They always were very encouraging. So I just kind of kept doing it. And then it sort of became my identity as a kid growing up, the artist kid in school.
You always had the sketchbook with you and fucking charcoal and
yeah. I mean, there was always an artist kid in your school, right? When you were a kid, don't you remember the artist kid? There was at least one of them.
Oh, sure. Yeah, it was really weird for me growing up because I also got really involved in art growing up. The first thing which I think is hilarious, the first thing that got me into it was these old commercials. I don't know if you've ever seen them, that they would try and get you to go to this art school and they'll send you a packet in the mail.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I remember those.
Here, just draw this like a turtle, for example.
Yeah, draw Tippy the turtle or something like that. I remember that. Yep.
Yeah, man. I ordered that, and that was the first step. Yeah, it was the first step for me. Like, all right, let me try this. And then in high school, I took a bunch of art classes, and into college as well.
Oh, cool.
And I loved it. I mean, and I would say that I got pretty good at it, and then all of a sudden, I just stopped doing it. I never did it again. I discovered music.
Yeah. I did too. Around 17, I started playing the guitar, and I tried that for about 10 years, trying to make it in a band. So I was kind of derailed away from that. But the thing is I had around age 12, I started sculpting and making masks and getting into makeup effects. And so then I was like, I want to do this for my job, makeup effects industry, work on movies and horror movies and stuff, because I was into that. And then around 17, I picked up a guitar and I got into punk music, and then I started a band, and then I was totally into that. But by the time the band started happening, I had got my first makeup effects job. So I had a job that paid pretty well, and then I had my band going. So I was doing art stuff in the film industry, but it wasn't my own personal stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So then I eventually kind of decided that in 2000 that the film industry wasn't for me anymore. So I worked my way out of it to start doing my own stuff, because I wasn't really expressing myself visually in the film industry, Sorry, my dogs are back there.
They're fighting each other?
No, they're barking at someone outside.
Oh, okay. So you mentioned you worked in the film industry. So I know you worked in on Hellboy and Hellboy 2. How was that experience? Like, how did you get picked up by Guillermo and to work? You know, was it him directly? Was it just a big company?
Yeah. Well, most the way I worked in the industry, I didn't own my own shop. I was like a sculptor and a painter and a creature designer, and you basically work the way that people work in the effects industry is you go to from shop to shop. It's a pretty small industry. Everybody knows all the shops, all the effect shops. And so, you know, jobs last anywhere from a couple weeks to 3 months to 6 months, maybe if you're lucky. I was usually at one place for a long time, though. I didn't do a lot of bouncing around. I was at the first place I worked at called Alterian Studios for about 10 years. And then they kind of got screwed up and had to lay everyone off. And then I worked at Rick Baker's for 5 years. And then they closed down. And then I worked at Spectral Motion for 5 years. But in between then, I would do, you know, odd jobs when I needed to if there was a layoff here and there. But so anyway, with Guillermo, he just I was working at Rick Baker's shop, and they got that job for the Hellboy character, but not all the other creatures in it. Just the Hellboy character was Rick Baker's shop, and then Spectral Motion had the creatures. And so I just happened to be working at Rick Baker's when Hellboy came in. Mm-hmm. So, and then Guillermo, I think he seemed like he knew my work already. So, but I never asked him about that because they had me sculpt his right hand of Doom.
Oh,
and
nice.
Then it was, other than that, it was like weird stuff like, you know, it's very assembly line at Makeup Effects. When I first got in the late 80s, it was like everybody had to know how to make molds and sculpt and paint, and you kind of got to follow maybe a whole effect all the way through and finish it and create the whole thing. But nowadays, it's like there's a mold shop, a mold department, and a sculpting department, and a painting department, and a mechanical department, and a seaming department. And so I forgot what my point was.
Well, okay. The reason I wanted to bring it up was to kind of ask you if it was any creative input at all coming from you. Is it like you mentioned, assembly line, like, hey, just do this job, you know?
Yeah, that's usually how it is. But I kind of got to design as well. I got to do my own spin on the right hand of Doom. They gave me a sketch that Mike Mignola, the creator of the Hellboy comic, did of the right hand of Doom. And so I basically, if you know his work, it's very it's simple. And when you're doing makeup effects, everything has to be super detailed and realistic. So I took his design and I tried to make it as realistic as possible. So it looked like it was made out of stone and had pits and cracks in it and stuff like that. So, I mean, I was able to put a certain amount of design into that. But, you know, and then on Hellboy 2, he let me design a character with pretty much no input, which was amazing and rarely happens. And that was the Chamberlain, which is this really small character that's in the movie just for barely any time at all. It's like the king's right-hand man. So that was rare, you know, to be able to, where he just said, do whatever you want.
Yeah. It
doesn't happen too often. Most of the time you're
just doing a job.
Yeah, you're a pair of hands for somebody else.
Yeah. That I could see why why you would want to get out of that. Being a creative person, you know, you would want more creative freedom, and instead of just sitting there doing a job, you know.
Yeah, pretty much. And then the other, you know, I got to a point as well that, well, let me say this: when I was working my way up the film industry, every time when you're new into it, you do a job, and then you're like, oh, I got pictures for my portfolio so I can get my next job. And then so every job you're kind of trying to build your portfolio so you can keep getting work.
Yeah.
And I got to a point where I didn't need a portfolio anymore because I just had a reputation in the industry as someone who was pretty good at sculpting and creature designing and painting. So at that point it was just to make money, and I didn't really have anything other reason to do it than make money. I kind of felt like I had done everything I wanted to do in that industry, and I sort of got as high as I think I could as a designer. And so I just felt like I was spinning my wheels. And then I decided, I'm going to try doing this fine art thing. So I was doing that while I was working in the film industry, doing that on evenings and weekends. And then I started selling, and then it was like, oh, man. So I sort of saw what life could be like not having a 40-hour-a-week job. Started getting an idea. I could do whatever I want and make a living. And so then it got really like, oh, man, I got to get out of this business and do my own thing, Yeah,
so you got the Hand of Doom back there, actually.
Oh, yeah. That's the prop that Sideshow Collectibles made based on the mold from...
oh, okay.
So this is my sculpture.
Wow.
And just like a recast.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was fun to sculpt.
Is that wearable? Can you put that on?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Handle inside.
Oh, that's great. That's good for cosplaying. Oh man! Speaking of cosplaying, I know you do. I know you've done. I've seen. That's where we met at a Monsterpalooza, and I think you were at D-Con as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So, how important is the conventions for you in terms of sales and making some money, getting your name out there?
Yeah, it's just one piece of the puzzle for me. For me, it's I've got my online sales. My web store at chetzar.bigcartel.com. That's where I have pretty much everything I offer for sale. And I make probably the bulk of my money from that. And then I do commission work where people contact me and they want a painting of, I don't know, a certain type of creature or whatever. And then I have gallery shows, like one gallery solo show a year. And then I have conventions. And then sometimes I teach painting classes a couple times a year. So between all of those, I can just squeak by. Yeah, make a living.
So do you enjoy those cons? I mean, I've become fascinated by them in the last few years. I never thought I would be. I'd see them and I'd just be like, oh man, it just seems like a pain in the ass. But once I met my girl, she got me into it, and now we just go to every single one we can get into. So
yeah, I think they're really fun. They're just from my point of view, they're a lot of work is the thing, setting up. And so I've got my wife and the person Sal who helps me do my shipping. The two of them do most of the setup now and help me run the booth, so it's a lot easier now. But it's usually long hours and it's pretty hard work, but I do enjoy them. I mean, I never get to go and walk around hardly though, because I'm always at the booth trying to hustle.
Right. and it works out for you. It's beneficial for you? I'm guessing you're making a good amount of money. And...
Yeah, it's worth it for sure. I wouldn't keep doing it. I don't really have. I only have. I have to make everything count. Because I'm not rich or anything. So everything's got to generate enough money to justify itself.
Yeah. So I wanted to kind of dive into maybe your psyche a little bit, since you specialize in dark art, and I know you talk about it on your podcast a lot, the dark art movement and everything like that. But what do you think is it that attracts you and myself too? I mean, I'm into monsters and everything that's creepy and horrific. What is it that kind of you think drives us there? Is there any kind of traumatic event maybe from your childhood or something like that kind of maybe puts you in that world? Yeah,
that's definitely part of it, I think. In the documentary, I'll have to send you a copy of the documentary if you give me your address, but
sure.
Or you can rent it on iTunes too, but I'll send you a free one if you want. But
awesome.
It's covered there. There was, a period in my early childhood where my family was in chaos and a lot of arguing and fighting, like serious, crazy fights going on between family members. And I was kind of just this little shy, sensitive kid who didn't know what was going on. And I think I withdrew. Well, there's other things in like I said, in the documentary, it's covered, but definitely there was a share of trauma for sure. And I think when I started watching horror movies, I already had a natural interest in art, but then when I started watching horror movies, I think that I found something that I could sort of pin my anxiety onto, like, I can relate to how watching Night of the Living Dead feels. That feels like how I feel most of the time,
Yeah.
in this chaos, all that, this kind of fear and anxiety. And I think just having something to relate to and just to be able to take it outside, from outside of my psyche and put it onto something else in a way made me feel like I was gaining some sense of mastery over it or something. Like I could,
Yeah, like therapeutic.
yeah, totally. So I think it's a combination of that. Like it's a healthy way of dealing with trauma, but I've also always just had kind of a weird sensibility too. Not necessarily dark, but weird and strange. Like I was into I don't know if you know Monty Python's Flying Circus, the TV show.
Oh yeah.
And those weird Terry Gilliam animations from that. I mean, I was totally into that when I was like 6. They used to have it on TV. I was a little kid because it was so weird, and I loved weird stuff and Big Daddy Roth and
Unintentionally creepy. Like they were just trying to animate, but it was so creepy looking that it just
like I said, it was just some of it was kind of creepy, but intentionally and unintentionally, I imagine. But more like it was the weird factor that I was interested in also. So the interest in dark stuff is kind of like a combination of, I think, having just naturally unusual tastes and dealing with trauma as well, and I think as a way of dealing with it, aside from relating it to horror films, as I started drawing it, but I wasn't conscious that's why I was doing it, but I think that's why I was doing it. I just felt like it felt good to draw monsters, and maybe it was like by drawing the monster, it was sort of, I was able to feel like in control of the thing that scared me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think there's that definitely psychological component to it. But then, and my mom was super cool about it and didn't think I was, evil or anything. And she let me do it. And that just developed into its own kind of thing.
That's really cool. Yeah, that's really cool. Because I definitely, my mother always thought I was insane.
Yeah, most of my friends who are into makeup effects and horror movies, most of them had parents that thought they were either devil, like satanic or something, or crazy or something like that.
Yeah. I spent most of my, I guess, adult life kind of repurchasing and reclaiming all these things that I had as a child that, as I would acquire, my mother would throw away.
Oh wow! Yeah.
Like I had the whole Tortured Souls from Clive Barker, the toy series.
Oh yeah, those are great.
And the second she saw it, like, oh my God, no, what's wrong with you? And she,
oh my God, that's traumatic.
So now me and my fiance and I are big toy collectors. As you can see, there's stuff everywhere. But I've managed to recover most of the stuff that I lost. But yeah, going back to the psyche thing, like it's funny to think about those things that could have caused the trauma in a youth. Like my parents also separated when I was young, so that caused a lot of fights and arguments and stuff in the house. And then I remember horror movies as well, just like the first Freddy, and I forget which movie it is. What's the movie that the guy has like a deformity and they chop his head off at the end of it? MTV was using it for a bit for a commercial at one point. I remember that. They had like a claymation of a dude getting his head chopped off, and it was the MTV logo at the end.
I can't think. Give me more specifics. Now I got it.
The dude had a crazy facial deformity. Not The Mask, but like the original The Mask back in the day, where the guy had like a weird face. But
right.
Yeah, this was more like he kind of looked like the Leatherface, but not really. I don't know, but that was one of those old movies. I got to look up which one it is that really traumatized me. And it was one of those things that I would hide behind the couch, but then I'd peek. As a little kid, as a little kid, just peeking, like, oh my God, and see how as much as I could before, I guess, anxiety took over.
Right. Yeah, it's like it's like a game you're playing with yourself too. It's like a challenge,
Right.
Just see how much you can take.
Yeah, and then I think just exposing myself to that, like watching all the Freddy and Jason and Leatherface and Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead and all that stuff, the George Romero stuff, kind of desensitized me now. Like I can't watch a horror movie and get scared anymore. It doesn't work.
I feel the same way.
It doesn't work.
There's nothing. Yeah, I'm like it's kind of like a lot. The holy grail now is you want to be scared by a movie.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And they can't do it anymore. All I can do now is recognize if something's done well, and is that creepy? That was clever. That was creepy the way they did it. It was a cool, unique idea, and I enjoy it. But it doesn't scare me anymore. I just, you can't. It just, I don't feel like I can be scared anymore.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's kind of off-putting for me because I want to experience that feeling I had when I was a child. But now I'm mostly focusing on the makeup work or just kind of the idea, the concept behind it. And then I get my jollies off of seeing the people around me watching it and freaking out.
Right. Have you seen that documentary called The Nightmare? I think it's on Netflix.
No, I have not.
Oh, you should watch that. That's pretty close because it's about shadow people and people that have what do you call it? Sleep paralysis.
Okay.
Sleep paralysis where your body's asleep but you're conscious, and then sometimes these weird shadow guys come in. It's like this whole phenomenon that people have experienced it. I've experienced it myself, and I know a lot of people who have, but it's basically the nightmare is people telling their stories about these experiences they had with these shadow people, and it's really, really scary. It's probably one of the scariest things I've seen in a long time.
Interesting.
So you should watch it.
Yeah, I'll definitely check that out because I like I said, I try and look. I think the last horror movie or scary movie we saw was The Babadook.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, all my friends are like, "Dude, it's so scary." And I watched it. And it was good. It was good, right. But I wasn't scared. I was like, "Oh, this is interesting." The guy's got a creepy voice.
Yeah, there's a good. Have you seen A Dark Song? This movie called A Dark Song.
No, I have not.
Yeah, you should watch that one. You probably won't get scared, but it's probably as scary as The Babadook. Probably that good at least. It's like an indie, and I think it's an Irish film, indie. It's really good. I mean, it's cool and pretty creepy.
I feel like there has been a resurgence of scary movies that are more independent and are like I haven't watched it yet, but I've heard a lot of great things, and I know I should have watched it by now, and I will. The Witch.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, I haven't watched it yet either, and I have to watch that.
I've heard great things about that. I never saw Crimson Peak, which is the latest Guillermo. Well, not the latest, but Guillermo del Toro one. I haven't seen that as either, but
that's worth seeing. It's got some great creepy ghosts. It didn't scare me, but it probably won't scare you. But actually, the costumes and set design, it's got a really kind of basic story, but the visuals are incredible. Like the costuming, and I'm not like a big costuming fan, but the costumes on there were unbelievable. It's really good.
I can appreciate a good costume and also, Guillermo's work. Like I went to the exhibit at the LACMA, which was beautiful. Saw some of your stuff on there, which was cool. But
that was cool.
It just the creativity behind the way it's very visual,
Yeah, he's a very visual director for sure.
Yeah, I think the last movie I saw that actually kind of made me freak out a little bit was The Fourth Kind, which is weird because it's not really a monster movie or anything, but
The Fourth Kind, I don't even think I saw that. What is that?
So it's a movie. They filmed it in two parts or in two ways, where it's a documentary, it's a mockumentary,
like Blair Witch kind of thing, sort of.
It's a recounting of alien abductions that happened in like Nebraska or something. And they filmed, what is it they call that? When they, dramatization.
Okay.
They filmed like a dramatization, and then as you're watching the movie, there are clips of supposed real interviews, and then they splice it in with the dramatization, which it has Mila Jovovich in it.
Huh.
It's just them kind of telling how they keep seeing this crazy-looking owl outside of their window, and that owl is somehow linked to aliens that have abducted certain people and kind of just mess with their minds. And, the whole process of the whole movie was kind of whatever. And then at the end, there's a scene that's supposed to be real footage. It's not, but it looks like real footage of a person in bed getting abducted. And it's not like your typical, like a light from the sky thing. Right. It's more of a possession, kind of like a demonic possession. And you see their jaw break open and like their mouth is super big. And they just start spewing out this like language. And it's super dark sounding. It's just like, and they translate it, and it's like, I am God, and, we're here to all this shit. And it was that, for some reason, that I sat in the theater, and I'm like, holy shit, this is crazy.
I gotta watch that.
Yeah, it was freaking me out. But yeah.
That's cool.
Speaking of like occult and paranormal things, you talk about it a lot in your podcast as well, and like you've mentioned the shadow people and all that. Mm-hmm. Have you ever experienced direct, like, have you seen ghosts or anything like that?
Yeah, I've seen. We talk about it on one of the episodes of the Dark Art Society podcast. I think the paranormal episode, maybe. Mm-hmm. One time I saw what was kind of like for about a second or two, I saw like kind of an outline of a guy that it would look like a reverse, the opposite of a shadow. So it was like a white shadow, kind of, like a silhouette, but it was white. And there was black behind him instead of, if there was a light behind someone, they appear like a shadow.
Sure.
I saw that, and I've had a lot of weird, unexplainable experiences, like I had a dream when I was a kid. This is also in the documentary, giving away all the good parts. But where I had a dream, it was on Easter, which was weird because my family wasn't really religious. My mom was sort of religious, but super liberal, kind of into weird occult stuff, but basic liberal Christian values, like be cool to people and, but she wasn't at all she was pretty liberal, put it that way. But anyway, I had a dream I was crucified on a cross. I was 12 years old. And then the next day I was thinking about the dream. I looked at my hands and I had these little marks on my hands that were like little hard calluses. It was weird. And they were not like, I believe me, I thought about it. I'm as skeptical as anybody. I was like, was I scratching my hands in the middle of the night? Did I bump them? It was like a little, the closest thing I have a scar from getting shot with a BB gun.
Okay.
On my knuckle here. I don't know if you can. You probably can't see it. Let me see.
I see. So
it's like it's like a perfectly round little circle where this BB gun hit me. Yeah. It looked like that on both hands, but it was raised and it was like callus material, like when you get calluses on your fingers from playing guitar or whatever. Yeah. It was hard like that, and then it was gone. The other thing is, it was gone the next day completely. And my mom took pictures of it. I've got a picture, but the pictures are kind of like crappy from 1975 or whatever. Yeah. But in precognitive dreams and out of bodies, I've had a lot of out of body experiences where I've been go to sleep and then I start floating around. So I've had a lot of that kind of stuff, more than ghost stuff, I guess.
Yeah, I remember as a child, my cousin and I grew up together. She moved in with us, and we both experienced quite a bit of weird occult. Like, we lived in front of a cemetery for a while.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. I remember I remember waking up in the middle of the night one night, and I just noticed my cousin wasn't there. We were sleeping in a bunk bed at the time. I remember realizing she wasn't there, so I got up and I'd go to the hallway, and she's standing in the hallway, freaked out, just standing there, like not moving. And I'm like, "Hey, are you okay?" And she just vomits immediately.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, I go to grab her. I'm patting her on the back. I'm like, hey, is everything okay? And she just starts crying. And I look up, and there's an old lady in our kitchen. And it's not anybody we know. It's not family.
And you both were seeing it?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
She couldn't express anything except for vomit and tears. And I just remember looking up and seeing the old lady, and she looked kind of creepy and like gross. There was not a lot of detail. It was just like, she just looked gross. And as soon as I noticed that I saw her and like I made contact, it disappeared.
Wow.
So I was like, holy shit. What the fuck was that? And if it weren't for her being there with me during that scenario, I would have just chalked it up to me hallucinating or something like that.
You talked about it afterwards, and she was like, yeah, she saw a lady also.
Yeah,
an old lady. Old
lady as well. And it wasn't the first time. We saw a couple things like that. Like, oh my God, did you see that? And I'm like, yeah, I saw something. I saw like a movement. And then obviously there could have been that psychological trick where like you're telling yourself you saw something, and then you just kind of agree, like yeah, I saw it too, and it might not have been anything, but I definitely believe that there's some stuff going on. I've had my fair share of out of body experiences, and I had a bad car accident in 2002. I've talked about it before on the podcast, but just in a recap for you, it's I crashed head on, died. Technically,
Oh my God! Wow.
According to the the homicide report that they had put together and everything.
Wow.
Yeah. And I woke up in the helicopter.
Oh my God!
Paddles of just
Whoa.
what the fuck. And during that time that I was under, I remember at the time it was not. I saw some like weird, crazy psychedelic shapes, and the first thing I saw was the Seed of Life, which at the time I didn't know what that was. I just saw that. I saw that shape, and the first thing I did when I could, because I was out for almost a month just with broken clavicle, broken ribs, all kinds of just bedridden for a while. But as soon as I was able to draw something, that was what I drew this. I don't know if you can see it through the light.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
The Seed of Life there.
Wow, yeah.
And I drew it on a piece of paper, and I flew to Mexico to see my dad because he moved to Mexico, and I got it tattooed on my body. And I'm like, this is important. I'm gonna just get that on my body so I can always remember what that was. And then little by little did some research on sacred geometry and all that stuff, and discovered pretty much what it is. If you're listening and you're interested, just Google Flower of Life or sacred geometry. There's a lot of information on it. I'm not going to get into it right now, but.
Yeah, I'm reading a guy right now, this guy Martin Ball, Martin W. Ball, and he was a big researcher on DMT. I don't know, do you know about DMT?
Oh yeah,
it's super strong psychedelic, and particularly 5-MeO DMT, which is the supposedly makes regular DMT look like nothing. And DMT is the stuff that makes you go into another dimension. And this stuff apparently with 5-MeO DMT, you take a hit, and in 10 seconds you are at your God, and everything is one. Like you go beyond the hallucinations to a point where it's beyond any visuals at all. And he says that through he claims to have gone all the way as far as you can go, and basically has been able to liberate himself from ego consciousness, basically. But he says that all the underlying energy of all reality is geometry, is mathematics and fractal geometry.
Yep.
And so when you saw that Flower of Life, and other people in the past have seen that, and when you trip, you see the geometric shapes and stuff, he's saying that's because that's sort of the underlying pattern of reality.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So anyway, that just reminded me when you said you saw that when you died. That's a trip.
Yeah, I need to read that book and maybe reach out to that guy, because I feel myself that so once the accident happened and I was able to start moving around again, that became my life goal, is to figure out what I saw during that time.
Right.
And I did a lot of travel. I did meetings with yogis and people that are, druggy, like, not druggies, that's kind of the wrong word, but just people that experiment with psychedelics. And I met Alex Gray.
He's super cool.
It's funny, man. Alex, I told him the story, and he offered for me to move to New York with him to help him build the Cosm. And at the time, I had a girlfriend at the time, and I'm just like, well, do I want to just uproot my entire life and leave everybody behind and go do this? But I chose not to, which I don't know. Everything happens for a reason, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I had an experience with Alex that nobody believes me. I have one friend that believes me. And it's
say it. I want to hear it.
Yeah. He came he came to Miami and did a live painting thing for Art Basel that's out there. I don't know if you've been for that, but you should check that out.
I have, but I know every year I want to go.
Yeah, it's really great. But he came down there, did a show, and I met him. We talked for a while, and I told him how I was having these crazy out-of-body experiences, kind of voluntarily, because I had started doing research about rebirthing and breathing techniques and trying to get myself to that state so I can understand what I saw more. And he grabbed me by the shoulder, and I immediately projected out of my body and was floating above both of us, looking down at both of us, and I'm just like, what the fuck? And I remember looking up and seeing the rest of the art gallery and people just roaming around, and I was kind of looking to see if somebody was seeing me up in the air.
Right.
Nobody noticed, and then I kind of just went right back into my body, and I kind of just panicked. I'm like, what the fuck just happened? And he's like, you felt that?
What did he say he did?
Yeah, he didn't say anything else. He's like, did you feel that? I'm like,
Wow.
And he just smiled and patted me on the back and walked away. I'm like, what the fuck? What are you doing to me?
I believe that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I know that it has a lot to do with the magnetic pull that our body generates. And if you play with magnets and like the magnetic poles, you can project certain things. And I kind of broke it down to figure out what he did and how he did it to me, but it's super interesting stuff. And
yeah.
I think it's something people should look into more.
Yeah, well, that Martin Ball's thing is that energy is underlying everything. Mm-hmm. You know, it's all about energy, and it's not even, and as far as quote unquote enlightenment, it's not about. There's no moralistic aspect to it at all. It's an energy thing. If you've got these, if you got these ego problems and personality problems, it's more of a blocked energy thing rather than a moral. You're doing the bad thing, blah blah blah. It's more like you have these. You're essentially everything's made up of energy, and it's. His book's called Being Human, and it's all about after he had this crazy experience, he wrote this book, and it's really great. It's kind of like people either love him or hate him because he's very blunt. And he basically is also kind of like everything, ghosts, all that stuff. Everything is kind of a projection of your ego. And the real truth, it's all kind of illusory. And the real truth is that God is a fractal energy being. And the fractal energy being is reality. And everything is God. And God is evolving through us. And so we are God as well. And so God is like this process, but it's this intelligent being, a fractal energy being. He says that's everything. It's really a trip. You should read. Yeah. It's a really good book, and it's really short too.
Yeah, I'll definitely pick that up because I kind of agree with what he's saying there. And the one thing I would say is I kind of attribute ghosts or any kind of paranormal thing that people experience, maybe not as a reflection or a projection, but more of consciousness is an energy,
right,
vibration, and when people die, that energy kind of goes out into the ether and everything around us. And if you live your life in a way where you're never curious or you ask any questions as to what happens when you die, you could potentially just be lost in the ether, just kind of floating around,
right?
Energy-wise, until you figure out the way out.
Right.
That's what I attribute ghosts and stuff like that to.
Yeah, I believe in the phenomenon of ghosts and all of this crazy stuff that happens. It's just the question is, what is it really? You know what I mean? I mean, it happens. People experience this stuff all the time, and most people don't talk about it because people think they're crazy. But the real question is, what is it? And I'm not really sure what it is, but I do kind of believe in that kind of that belief that everything is God, basically everything that exists. Because I always thought, okay, people say. And I don't have a hang up with the word God. I know a lot of people do, but I don't see it as the white man or white bearded man in the clouds sort of thing.
No,
yeah. But I always thought, Christians especially would say, God is all powerful, but there's the devil and this stuff that exists outside of God. And I always thought, if God is all powerful, how could anything exist outside of God? How could you be all powerful and not encompass everything? That's not all powerful to me. So I don't know. It kind of it makes sense to me, but you should check that book out.
For sure. Yeah.
It's
funny. I have that conversation with certain religious people, especially Christians. They're like, I'll bring up, I like fucking with them. I like trolling them and like, I believe in Satan. Like, yeah. And, and they're like, how can you believe in Satan and this and that? And I'm like, well, you know that you believe in Satan too. And
right.
Like, no, I don't. Jesus is our blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, but it's all part of the same book.
Right, right. Yep.
It's just another part of the story. It's if you believe in Jesus, you believe in Satan. I'm sorry, that's just how it is.
Yep.
So,
yeah, there's a million inconsistencies. That's another one of his points in the book is that religions basically are sure they're attempts at explaining the unexplainable, but in most cases, or pretty much he says all cases, where they are maybe attempting to liberate you from the attachment to your ego, all the dogma and stuff ends up reinforcing the ego. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So it kind of does the opposite. It keeps you kind of shackled by your ego, these beliefs and, all the stuff you have to do to say you're a Christian or whatever.
Well, speaking about all this stuff, you also were involved with the band Tool. You did some artwork for their videos, and I know that a lot of their music material, their lyrics and stuff like that, touches on those subjects. How did you get connected with them and with Adam and all that?
Well, Adam Jones used to be a makeup effects guy, so I think it was probably in the early 90s. He was working at Alterian Studios, that shop I said I worked at for 10 years, the first big job I had. He came in as one of the floaters. You know how I said people go from shop to shop between jobs? He was he worked at Stan Winston's mostly, but I guess he got laid off or something, and he came to work at our shop for a bit. And so then we just became friends, and we were both into music and, kind of underground music and stuff. And we actually jammed a couple times, because he was like, "Yeah, I want to start a band," and so and then I was trying to start a band, and it was funny too because we jammed, and it was total ego too, man. I could have been in Tool probably. I mean, it wouldn't have been Tool if I was in it, because we were kind of in different types of music. I was more into punk stuff, and he was really into what was yet to be called grunge. But I remember him telling me about Nirvana and grunge and how great it is, and it was before the mainstream. It's before they had any success. We jammed together, and it was like, I didn't push it to keep going because I had my vision of music, which was more Minutemen and kind of this punk, post-punk type thing. But, he had, we jammed on a Tool riff on, I forget which song, but, we jammed on that before they were
before they were a band.
Yeah. And it's just funny because, I'm like, I'm just thinking to myself, well, this is not really my style. And, and then he goes off, and then it's like, oh, Tool song on the radio. Hey, that's Adam.
Yeah.
And I was like, no.
It's a crazy phenomenon how successful that band became, because the music's a little weird,
Yeah.
Not very mainstream sounding. So.
Totally. And then on top of it, to be able to put an album out every 10 years and still have this huge fan base.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Any other band that would try to do that, like, hey, we're just going to put an album out every 10 years, you will not have any fans.
Right.
Back.
But I remember, though, he was kind of the visual guy. He would deal with the videos. He directed the videos. And Adam always had really good taste in music. Like, he always knew the cool bands that I didn't know of, like, before they were big. He turned me on to so many cool artists that I didn't know about, like Beksinski, and he's like got great artistic taste, and I remember that from the early days about him.
Yeah, I think that's really what got me into the band was the music video. Mm-hmm. So I remember seeing, like, I think it was, I don't know, it was probably their first one, either Sober or something. Yeah. They had like the little claymation, and it was super super interesting to me at the time. I'm watching MTV, I'm like, what the fuck is this? There's art on TV.
The band's not hardly in the video, and
it's not a bunch of dudes with spiky hair and like shot beat necklaces, and
people still don't get that. People still have not learned that lesson. Don't be in your videos if you want to make a cool video, and still people do these lame videos where it's them just
rocking out,
lip syncing and pretending to rock out. It's like,
Yeah, make it. It's an art form. Music is an art form, and everything about it should be an art form. Like it should be all encompassing. It's not just the music, but the visuals should also play a big part. I'm always attracted to bands that have really cool visual effects on stage, as well, and creative looking videos.
Yep, that's like Devo was the same way. You know, Devo was pioneering before they hit big with Whip It. They were a total art band. I'm a huge fan, and I know Adam's a big fan of Devo as well, and Maynard named his kid Devo.
Nice.
Yeah, and so I mean, they were like an college art project that became a band because a band was part of the art project, and the band took over. But they were doing live or music videos that are really great even now. They're like the stuff from the 70s. It's so super creepy and weird too. Really disturbing, great stuff with a sense of humor too.
Yeah. For me it was Pink Floyd, I think, too.
Oh yeah,
that was one of the big ones. At The Wall, when they released The Wall, it just changed my whole life.
Yeah.
Like, wait a minute, you can make a whole movie about an album?
I know. Super
That's
cool.
Crazy.
Yeah, super great. Yeah, Tools kind of like Pink Floyd for this generation, you know, or people our age, or you're probably 10 years younger than me, probably.
Yeah, I'm 35, turning 36.
Yeah,
soon.
I'm 49.
Wow, you're almost 50.
I know, I am.
Well, you don't look it, man, so good for you.
Yeah, no gray hairs. I still got my hair, and I only have a few grays. I don't dye my hair or anything, so I got lucky.
Yeah, my body just stopped giving a shit. Stopped growing hair. I used to have a huge mohawk back in the college days, and
you got the reverse.
Now I got it down here. Yeah. Yeah, it's nuts, dude. So I had a few fan questions that I asked on Facebook. Like, if you have any questions for Chet, let me know.
Cool.
And some people sent me some stuff.
All right.
One of them being the fascination with the number 5. And I think you talk about that on your documentary or something, or in one of your books or something like that.
Yeah, that's in the documentary. It's a really long story. I would say get the documentary. The documentary is really good. It came out. I have not heard a bad review about it. People love the documentary. So you can get that at chetzar.bigcartel.com, or you might be able to get it on Amazon, and you could rent it on iTunes. But I'll say, I think the main part of it, there's a lot to it, and we go over it in the documentary. But the main part of it was pretty much that's like the age where most of my trauma occurred.
Okay.
Where my parents got divorced and all the chaos was happening, and that was I think it was kind of the accumulation of all the most worst parts of my childhood and around age 5, and that which really set the tone for the rest of my life as far as getting into the dark stuff and overcoming it. And
it created your monsters that you like painting.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. Another one here. Growing up, did your art ever rub anyone the wrong way? So I would assume, I know you said your mom was cool with it, but teachers or stuff like that, peers, were they ever disturbed by you? Like, we're going to call some kind of somebody to come take a look at you because.
Well, it's surprising. I grew up in the 70s, so
everybody was on psychedelics.
Well, no, it was just very chill in the 70s. Like, teachers, at least I didn't get any crap from my teachers. I'm thinking. Definitely. I mean, I remember I had a relative that used to always say, "Why can't you draw nice things like flowers?" And I was just like, ugh, it made me so mad. Like, you don't get it. Like, why is a flower legitimate and a monster not? Right. There's no reason. You're painting something to express a feeling, or because you think it's beautiful or whatever. It could be anything. It could be a bowl of fruit. If it can be a bowl of fruit, why can't it be a monster? It doesn't make any sense. So, but I do remember, I remember in the 6th grade drawing a picture. Oh, it was the best drawing I had done up that point. It was a drawing of Kiss. And I was like all the band members of Kiss, like live on stage. And it was so good. And my teacher told me to put the drawing away because class was back in session. And I just had to do one last thing. And she came over and she just tore it in half. And I was so pissed. And I told my mom, and my mom was so cool. She went down to the teacher and she completely reamed her, ripped her a new asshole, and
nice.
My mom was pissed about that too. Yeah, but the only other thing I can remember is in a high school art show I was in. I made a painting of a. It was during the, I guess, early '80s. There was the baby seal thing was coming into the mainstream, that people were clubbing baby seals for fur.
Oh, right.
That first came out, I think, in the early '80s. Like that became like a cause to fight against. And of course, I'm being a big animal lover. I thought it was horrible. So I made a really good drawing. I have it somewhere of this kind of like a fur trader guy standing there, and instead of holding a baby seal, he's got one hand, he's got a club with a nail sticking out of it. And in the other hand, he's got a human baby. He's holding this human baby by the leg, and there's a big hole in the back of its head and all this blood coming out. And and it was called "What's the Difference?" So it was, total high schoolers take on a political issue. But I think I upset a lot of people because it was so graphic. People were upset. I heard people were upset about that, and but I think people thought it was an anti-abortion statement as well, which upset maybe liberals as well. So it just, both ends of the spectrum got pissed about that.
Jeez.
But I remember being in second grade, and they would let me draw, like around Halloween, they'd let me paint. All the other classes would be doing classwork, and they would let me go outside and paint banners for the Halloween festival. So they were really cool about it and really encouraging that they saw that I had interest in it.
That's cool. That's good.
I got off easier than a lot of people did, I think.
Yeah. I was gonna say, not a lot of people get the support that you got. Let's see. Did you ever create something to impress a girl, art wise? And if so, did it work? And what was it?
I'm sure I did as, a kid. I can't think of one instance. I've done, it's most of the stuff I've done is probably for my wife. I've done some pretty cool drawings and stuff for her. I'm sure I did as a teenager, because that was my identity. I was the art guy. So nothing comes to mind except some paintings I did for my wife, and drawings throughout the years, and she liked them. So we're still married after 26 years. So I guess that probably worked a little bit.
Nice. Did you guys meet through your art, like, in any way? Like, was she a fan, or did you?
No. Actually, it's this is in the documentary, and it is. It's a really weird story the way we met, but the non-weird version is that we had a mutual friend. She was like a beautician, like a straight makeup artist, and did hair and stuff, and I was a makeup effects kid, and our mutual friend was a makeup effects guy, and he hired both of us to work at Magic Mountain Halloween Haunt in the 80s. And I think that's where we first met, like doing makeups and stuff on people for the Halloween version of Magic Mountain, the amusement park. So we kind of met through this one friend of ours, this mutual friend.
Very cool. Let's see, what's the other? What is your favorite / easiest form of media that you work with? It's like sculpting or oil paintings.
Favorite and easiest are two different things. I would say easiest is probably drawing and graphite. That's my background is drawing. That was the main thing I used to always do as a kid. So favorite, it's a toss up between oil painting and sculpting. I really love sculpting. It's really fun sculpting in clay. But I love painting. So I can't choose between the two. I mostly paint. I wanted to be a sculptor when I started in fine art, but it was so time consuming and expensive because you have to mold everything and cast everything, that I went with painting because it just was more practical. So but I love painting as well. It's really fun, and I like it because it's not the easiest thing to do. It's hard to do. That's what's rewarding about it. You get the high when you do a successful painting because it's so fucking hard.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Once it's completed, it's that sense of accomplishment.
Yeah.
For sure.
And when you're doing it right, it's just, there's nothing like it. It's definitely like a rush.
Yeah. And the last one I have is, how many of your creations are products from your dreams and or just like visions or something you have?
Probably
all of it.
No, actually none of it.
None of it. Okay.
Actually, there's one image, that tool. Okay, there's one image. The closest thing I could say to what the question is, there's one image I have called Toilet Training, and it's a digital image from an animation when I got into 3D animation in the late 90s. It's a weird, just looping 1 minute animation. And Adam saw it. I was showing it to him, and he's like, "Hey, can we use that in a tool show?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And I think they still use it from time to time. It's this weird looping animation, basically going down a hallway, and there's these creepy pictures on the wall, and you go into this big room that's almost like a big old-fashioned gymnasium, and there's these like body parts on the ground that are writhing, but they're not bloody. It's like they're like, it'd be like a cut off arm, but it's healed where it was cut off, and so it's like writhing arm, writhing torso, and then there's these 3 bathroom stalls, and and then a guy standing in front of the bathroom stall facing it, like looking into the bathroom stall, and he's holding a barbecue fork, and he's naked, and he's got a top hat, and he's got red long hair, and he kind of turns around and looks at you. Then the camera goes into the toilet. So that that was from a mushroom trip I had. I saw that, basically a variation of that. It played like a movie in my head, and it was so crazy. At the time, there wasn't computer animation, because this was 87 probably when this happened. And I just was like, oh man, if I could make this into a movie, it'd be so amazing, but I didn't have the means. And then in the late 90s, 10 years later, I got into computer animation, and that was one of the first animations I did. And so that was based on, an inner vision, I guess. But everything else I do, my dreams are not cool like my paintings. They're disturbing and scary sometimes, but they're not like my paintings. I've never dreamt one of those creatures at all.
Okay.
Painting process is, I doodle and I sketch, and the monsters are what come out of that. But it's very intuitive. I'm not, usually when I'm drawing or painting, I don't have an idea in my head of what I want to create. I just create, and that's kind of what naturally forms out of it.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah. My dream, when I have weird, creepy dreams and there's a monster in it, usually the monster looks like it's literally made out of paper mache, like some cheesy fun house you would go to as a little kid, like with seam lines and a bad paint job, a poster paint. It's weird. It's really strange. I remember I saw one. There was this monster that was chasing me. It was going on the ceiling, driving around, and it looked like it was made of paper mache, and it had dried mustard all over it. Like someone spilled a bunch of mustard on it, and it dried and got all crusty.
Ooh.
It's just like, that's stupid. It's not scary, but in the dream it was really creepy,
Well, sure.
And I would never paint that, because it's like it wouldn't translate at all.
Right. Yeah, it's the emotion that you felt.
Exactly.
It'll be hard to translate that. Yeah.
And it's like the paintings I'm painting now are like me expressing the feeling of that dream, but not the image I saw.
Not visual. Yeah, man. It's interesting that you're able to do that. I have a lot of visions and dreams and stuff, and I'm always fascinated by your art and other monster art and everything, and I'm always intrigued as to how it comes about too, because I have these crazy thoughts, but I never am able to, I guess, put them down on paper. No, I have like this one that I used to have a lot when I was a kid. It kind of went away already, but I used to have a recurring dream where I would be sitting in a room. It was like a black, dark room, and there was a light shining on a box, and the box had a grid with little marbles in it, kind of inside of it, and then I just kind of, I would see myself sitting there looking into the box, kind of rocking back and forth.
Wow.
And then like I would walk up to myself, I guess.
Yeah.
And then loud sounds would trigger, like just screams and like static sounds and like super crazy, like overwhelming loud sounds. And the box would kind of start shaking up and down, and the marbles would go up and down.
Wow.
And then everything would stop, and the marbles would go down, and the guy, I would start rocking back and forth again, and I would happen a lot, and I have no, like, how do you translate that?
Right, yeah. That reminds me of a dream I had, where a recurring dream I would have as a kid, where there would be this, imagine if you're looking at like a giant metal ball on a chain that's spinning on the chain, so there's like a center point, and this almost like the Earth going around the sun, except there's no sun there. And it's like it's in the perspective is it goes far from you and then it gets real close to you as it comes around. You know what I mean? So it's kind of at an angle.
Okay.
But the ball is like as big as the universe. And so where it's just black in space, the sense of power you get from that immense, huge thing going and like going by your face is just the feeling is it's so terrifying. It's terrifying that it's this huge force, but it's like you can't, if you did that as an animation, it would be like that's just a ball on a string. That's not scary or whatever.
Right.
So it's I guess for me it's more like it is trying to capture the feeling and it's in a way that other people can relate to it. But I wanted to say about your dream is that, or just about expressing it through art. That's the thing is, I think a lot of people have ideas like, crazy ideas that they could come to them in dreams, but people just can't draw it naturally. You have to, it's all about practice and training and over and over and over and over and over and over to be able to get it out in some way and translate that feeling or whatever. And, if you don't have the thing to where you have to be an artist and that's all there is for you, or you're going to hate your life, you're probably not going to pursue it to the point where you can really express yourself, because it's hard to do. Art is, there's so much to learn about it. And so it's easy to drop it or to give up, or just to be like, I'm not going to keep up on it because it's so difficult. So you have to have that crazy amount of passion to get you through it, because most of the time it's not all fun and games. Most of the time it's like busting your ass and looking at your weaknesses and working on them and figuring out what you're doing wrong and how do I correct this. It's like, lifting weights or something or working out. It's like not fun for the most part.
Everything takes work. Everything takes work. Even like, meditation. People talk about meditation. You have to do that every day. Yeah.
People are always like, oh, I don't think it works for me. I tried it for a week one time and it didn't do anything. It's like, you think you're going to work out for a week and you're going to see any results other than being sore,
Right.
You got to stick with it if you want to see any kind of results.
Yeah, I think my major issue is just that I'm attracted to so many different things.
Yeah,
that's true. That's
true with creative people is we have a hard time choosing one thing, which can keep you from really focusing on anything.
Yeah, I focused on music for a while. I mean, I still do it every once in a while, but I think that one ended up taking over more, because as much as I loved art, I never got the satisfaction that I got from creating a song and then like showing it to someone and they're like reacting to it. Like that reaction is what I was like, cool. That's what I'm doing it for. Awesome.
Right. Yeah. That's why it took me off my path for so long, or the visual art path, because I love writing. I love songwriting. So much fun. And recording I was into. Performing is really fun. I love playing music.
Yeah.
I could easily do that instead of the visual stuff if I could easily go into that. But it's probably a good thing it didn't work out, because so many musicians are screwed now because of the way the music industry is.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I'm not doing it much anymore. It's just can't really do it unless, you get lucky pretty much. It's luck as to who someone ends up at your show and gets blown away and says, here's a bunch of money.
Yeah, which is, it's as rarer than ever now,
Yeah. And it's not even, like for myself, I was never under the pursuit of the money or the fame or the, I want to be on MTV. It was just, I want to be able to do this music and not have to worry about paying my bills later.
Absolutely. Yep.
You know what I mean?
Same here. Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's kind of how I am with the art as well now. It's like, I don't care about making a ton of money. I just want to be able to create art and pay the bills,
Is there any other musician out right now that you think you would want to work with in terms of creating something for them?
That's a good question. I always wanted to do something for this band called No Means No. I don't know if you've ever heard of No Means No. You probably haven't, because nobody has. No. But they're a Canadian band. Anyone who follows me on Facebook knows I'm constantly, talking about No Means No, because they're totally amazing. There's this technically a punk band, but they're known as the godfathers of math rock.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like they kind of because they were punk with a jazz influence and a progressive influence and amazing drum. It's a 3-piece, amazing drumming, like jazz style drumming, but really heavy and intense and
kind of like Refused.
Yeah, totally like Refused, but a little more raw.
Okay.
But definitely Refused is great. They're that same kind of vibe. But you should check them out. If you check them out, check out the album called Wrong. You can just check it out on YouTube. All the songs from Wrong are on there. If you'll know if you're going to like No Means No within the first 10 seconds of the Wrong album.
Okay.
It's amazing. But anyway, I would love to have done something for them, but they just broke up finally. So I can't really think of any bands like, I wish I could work for them. I like Mastodon. I think I could probably do some cool album artwork for them.
You know Braun. I know you.
Yeah.
He has one of your paintings in his house.
Yeah. But it's like I'm sure they got everyone and their grandma hitting them up to let me do artwork for you, and I just don't want to be that guy. I figure if any band that wants me to do their artwork will hit me up. I got
for sure. Yeah,
it'd be cool, but I'm not. I've got so much going on. So
well, I mean, there might be also the case of like I know, for example, Braun's kind of a super nice guy, so he might feel like I'm not going to bother him with that. But they also got Skinner does a lot of stuff for them as well. So
I'm friends with Skinner. Skinner's super cool. Yeah. So I same with Tool. It's like I don't sit and bother them about doing artwork for them because they do what they want to do. They pick the artists they think are going to best suit the album, and if I'm not that guy, I understand they've got their vision, so they know I'm there. Although I did hit him up not too long ago and texted Adam and said, hey, if you ever need any artwork for the new album, just putting it out there, which I haven't done in fucking 10 years probably, but just because it would be cool, because you never know with them what's going to be their last album. But I would never go past that point. I would never badger anybody into. I just wouldn't want to get it that way. I want someone that wants my work because they just love it.
Right.
That's the way I would like to work.
Cool, man. Well, I appreciate your time, dude. Thanks for talking with me for a while. And
it's fun. I had a good time.
Yeah, man. Everybody listening, check out Dark Art Society.
Dark Art
podcast.
Society. Yeah, the Dark Art Society podcast. It's on SoundCloud, iTunes, YouTube, Podbay, a bunch of stuff, and Google Play now.
Nice. So cool. Check out the podcast. Follow at Chet Zar, Instagram, Twitter, all that stuff.
Yeah, I'm pretty easy to find out there on the internet.
Cool, dude. Have any conventions coming up?
Designer Con is in November, I think, is the next one. Isn't that
cool.
I think it's in November, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, and one last plug for my website. My web store is chetzar.bigcartel.com.
Yes, go there and buy stuff.
Yes, please.
Support local independent artists. Local for me, maybe not for you, but support independent artists. It doesn't matter where they're from.
Yeah, true. Absolutely.
Very cool, man. Well, yeah, thanks again for your time, dude. We should maybe hang out sometime if you ever have free time. I barely have free time, too. So. Yeah. But if we can ever coordinate that, I think it'd be cool to hang out and
absolutely
shoot the shit about ghosts some more.
Definitely. Had a great time. Where do you live? I
live in Long Beach.
Oh, I'm from Pedro. It's funny. I grew up in San Pedro, yeah.
Very cool. Very cool.
I'm out near Monrovia, but if you ever want to come out here, there's a killer pizza place around the corner from my house. It's called Zello, and it's amazing. It's got cornmeal crust pizza. Ooh. It's unbelievable. So
I'm a fan of pizza. I'm a big guy.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah. Cool, dude. I'll hit you up. We'll be in touch.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, man. Cheers.
All right. Thanks. Yeah.
Side